As many of you, or maybe all of you know, last weekend during the storm, my family lost our electricity. From what we could tell, this happened when at one end of our street, a small branch cracked from a tree and it landed on a line. When this happened, it caused the line to snap like two halves of a black licorice stick, leaving each side lying on the street. For 2.5 days, while we waited for that branch to be safely removed and our power to be restored, we lived with only the fireplace providing our heat, and we had one camp light and 3 candles providing our light. And it was dark. It was very, very dark. In fact, last Sunday felt like one of the longest days we as a family have ever experienced. The gloomy, translucent sky turned ebony far too quickly, and we found ourselves feeling somewhat trapped with nowhere to go. It was dark. It was very, very dark. And I don't know about any of you, but in my family, we are so used to the lights overhead, the buzzing and the soft noise and soft light of computers, and the small light of our phones reflected in our faces, to not even have a speckle of brightness meant that darkness seemed to absorb right into our souls. And darkness can be a place where none of us like to be in. This time of year seems to be dark all the time. All the time. And not only does the darkness seem to be outside, we can also feel a sense of darkness within our own souls. Darkness from grief, depression, anxiety, a sense that Christmas has to be and has to look a certain way. And during this time of 2020, when we're having a pandemic, social unrest, and deep political arguing, the darkness can seem even more overwhelming. In our scriptures, we might glean that darkness is supposed to be bad. For example, from the Hebrew scripture, Psalm 18, verse 28. For it is you who light my lamp. The Lord my God lightens my darkness. Or in the New Testament, such as Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8. For at one time you were in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of the light. As Christians, we value the symbolism and knowledge of light. We might hold the truth and the expression, a dark night of our souls. This is a place where we struggle and suffer because we think God cannot be found in the darkness. One of my favorite hymns, This Little Light of Mine, tells us we're not to let the light go out. Light is the divine, reflected in each of us. So, who really wants to be in the dark when it seems like that's the opposite place where we should be as Christians? When the dark is overwhelming, when we might think the purpose of darkness is simply something which just needs to be overcome with light. That's the only purpose of the dark, is it's a place to be overcome with light. After all, the birth of God's Son is when the overhead sun starts to increase the gift of light in our lives. We are reminded light always comes back from the darkness. Darkness never has the last word in our lives. We are reminded, perhaps, in Genesis, out of the darkness, God created light. But I will say this again. Out of the darkness, God created light. In the dark, there was creation. Perhaps, just perhaps, the dark is where the divine within us finds creative transformation. Or, as John of the Cross wrote in his book, Dark Night of the Soul, darkness can be a blank slate where we discover and create ourselves. I offer, this is where we as Christians can hold hope and understand the role of darkness. The tomb where Jesus was buried. A miracle occurred. We don't know exactly what happened during the time Jesus lay in the tomb, but we know a miracle happened. We do know in the darkness of the tomb, Jesus transformed. Christ was created. And we are reminded in this darkness, in that darkness of the tomb, death did not have the last word. So we move from that tomb to Mary's womb. And I lift up that we honor this place where another miracle was created in the darkness. Because in the darkness is where Christian miracles are created. Now, every year about this time, I will admit, I feel like the darkness is claustrophobic, wrapping itself around me, and I feel like I can't see what is going on in the rest of the world. And maybe for some of us, as the days become darker and darker, we find our souls reflecting a darkness that lacks hope, love, peace, and joy. But if remember this place of Mary's womb, a place where that miracle of Jesus was created, we are reminded there were also challenges in that world, social unrest, challenges, hunger, And when we think of that, maybe we can think of that place, that darkness of Mary's womb, and we can see those miracles that are created in other dark places. And when we see that, we know there can be hope, joy, peace, and love in this world. If we remember Mary's womb, the place where the miracle of Jesus was created, we know in that darkness is the presence of the divine. I'll say that again. In the darkness, there was the presence of the divine. Furthermore, maybe there were many reasons why those early Christians also worshipped in caves, those dark places where our faith gestated and was birthed. Maybe, just maybe, the Christian faith depends on darkness and what is created in darkness. The darkness of Mary's womb, the darkness of the tomb, and the darkness of the caves of our early faith. So this year, while honoring all of our struggles, while honoring all that is going on, honoring the long days of darkness that can be both on the outside of the world as well as on the inside of ourselves, I lift up that we ask ourselves, what is being created out of this time? Where do we find the divine creation in this darkness? What can the divine gestate and birth in this darkness? What is God creating now in our darkness? As Genesis reminds us, out of darkness, divine light is created. Out of the darkness, divine light is created. For God created the heavens and the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." God saw that light was good. The light created in the darkness. God separated light from the darkness and called them day and night. What can we as Christians create out of the dark?